All right, our next speaker is Timothy Jennings all the way from California State University, Fullerton. Let's give him our attention. There we go.
All right, so good morning, everyone. So my paper is entitled Dumbledore's Road to Hell, How His Good Intentions Nearly Led to Voldemort's Victory. So throughout the Harry Potter series, Albus Dumbledore is presented as a loving and brilliant man who stood up against the forces of evil. And it is easy to overlook, especially in the first 6 books, that he is also presented as a man who is greatly flawed. This talk will explore some of the ways his flaws show up in the series and how they led to a number of unnecessary difficulties, dangers, and deaths. While his plan to defeat Voldemort was ultimately successful, victory was achieved only because Harry corrected these flaws and corrected the plan by overcoming and removing the flaws that Dumbledore had in his plan. So despite the public face as a loving man, many of Dumbledore's actions failed to live up to this philosophy of love. In Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Rita Skeeter publishes a book that reveals the hidden life of Albus Dumbledore. Despite the book's many flaws, Dumbledore's weaknesses, hypocrisies, and failures are confirmed by his brother, Aberforth. He states that Dumbledore learned secrecy at her mother's knee, secrets and lies. That's how he grew up, and Albus was a natural. This tells us that Dumbledore did not begin his life as a great believer in love. Instead, it is something he developed later in life. He goes on to address the effects of his brother's manipulative nature by saying that people had a habit of getting hurt while he was carrying out his grand plans. Many of the people my brother cared about very much ended up in a worse state than if he'd left them well enough alone. And Dumbledore confirms that being selfish is part of his nature when his spirit talks to Harry in Deathly Hallows. And this is a point when he no longer has a public face that he has to worry about. So the trauma of losing his sister Ariana was obviously a life-changing event for Dumbledore. And I believe that this is the point when he started to realize he needed to make a major change and when he started to accept this philosophy of love. And this is when he started trying to overcome his scheming nature. But despite this conflict between his nature and his new ideal, Dumbledore still makes use of his scheming nature when he develops his plan to defeat Voldemort. When Dumbledore is introduced in the first chapter of Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, his plan to defeat Voldemort begins when he drops Harry off at the Dursleys. He explains to Harry in Order of the Phoenix that leaving him with the Dursleys protected him from Voldemort due to his mother's love being in his blood. While this makes it seem like Dumbledore is solely motivated by love for Harry, it is revealed in Deathly Hallows that he was also motivated by his grand scheme to defeat Voldemort. One wonders how much love there truly was in his motivation when you consider what Alice Mills says when she writes that Harry is introduced as an abused child, bullied, systematically humiliated, kept ignorant of his magical heritage and the facts of his parents' death. He lacks the knowledge to make sense of the odd, miraculous events that occur sporadically in his wretched life and thus cannot take responsibility for them or make meaningful choices with regard to them. So Dumbledore's secretive scheming condemned Harry to a friendless life of being bullied, living in a closet, being a family's unfavored and abused child, and being denied his heritage. The closest Dumbledore comes to admitting his role in this is by saying that he knew he was condemning you, Harry, to 10 dark and difficult years. So this neglect and cruelty that Harry suffered could have been avoided, or at least minimized, if Dumbledore had allowed love to play a greater role in his plan, and if Dumbledore took a more active role in Harry's life. While he did have Mrs. Fig check in on him, her role was incredibly limited. When Harry asked Mrs. Fig why she never said anything about being a squib, all she said was, "Dumbledore's orders. I had to keep an eye on you, but not say anything. You're too young. I'm sorry I gave you such a miserable time, but the Dursleys would never have let you come if they thought you'd enjoy it. It wasn't easy." So this provides some incredibly problematic information about Dumbledore. Rather than ensure that Dursleys treated him well, he put someone in place who was to give Harry a miserable time because she was simply following orders. So his need for secrecy negatively affected Harry's care and quality of life as a child. And throughout the book series, Mrs. Figg actually proves herself to be an intelligent woman and a great actress. So he could have made great use of her, and his inaction, I think, makes him complicit to the abuse that Harry suffered from. Because Mrs. Figg, she could have found a way to improve Harry's life without disrupting the Dursleys' much-desired illusion of normalcy. When exposed to minimal pressure, the Dursleys proved themselves capable of making small improvements to Harry's life. When Harry receiving his first letter from Hogwarts convinced the Dursleys to move Harry from a cupboard to a bedroom. How much more could have been achieved if Dumbledore, or one of his representatives, checked in on Harry every few months? It is interesting that Dumbledore condemns the Dursleys for their cruelty and neglect in Half-Blood Prince, yet never acknowledges that his inaction was a mistake. Another prominent problem Dumbledore struggles with is the way he withholds information from his allies. This can be seen particularly well in the Order of the Phoenix, when Dumbledore refuses to make eye contact with Harry or even be in his presence. Dumbledore never explained what was going on until it was too late. He could have sent a letter to Harry or had Professor McGonagall speak on his behalf. Not only would an explanation have made Harry's year at Hogwarts much easier, it also would have helped Harry to understand Voldemort's goals with the Department of Mysteries. This understanding would have helped Harry to avoid the dangers of being attacked by Death Eaters, being possessed by Voldemort, and the anguish of losing his godfather. Mills goes on to note that Dumbledore is, in effect, replicating the tactics used by Harry's unpleasant aunt and uncle when they control him by keeping him ignorant of his magical powers and the truth about his parents' death. So while Dumbledore was motivated by a desire to keep Harry happy, his actions failed to achieve this. Mills goes on to point out that withholding information from Harry diminishes his agency. While I agree with this observation, I don't think it goes far enough in criticizing Dumbledore. In addition to limiting Harry's agency, it also limits the agency of the Order of the Phoenix and Dumbledore's army. A significant amount of difficulty, harm, and death could have been avoided if Dumbledore trusted just a few of them. When the members of Dumbledore's army offered to help Harry in Deathly Hallows, Harry comes to an important realization when he thinks Dumbledore had warned him against telling anyone but Ron and Hermione about Horcruxes. Secrets and lies, that's how he grew up. In Albus, he was a natural. Was he turning into Dumbledore, keeping his secrets clutched to his chest, afraid to trust? So when Harry faces an important decision at this moment, does he embrace secrecy and lies like Dumbledore, or does he embrace trust and honesty? It's an interesting parallel to the choice he made with the Sorting Hat in Sorcerer's Stone. Does he enter Slytherin or Gryffindor? Just as he chose Gryffindor after the decade of abuse he faced at the hands of the Dursleys, he chose to trust and love his peers after the difficulties he experienced in the years he was mentored by Dumbledore. This decision to trust his allies provided him with information he needed to destroy 2 of the remaining Horcruxes. Choosing Dumbledore's deceit and lies and secrecy would have deprived him of this knowledge, led to a failure in his mission, and victory for Voldemort. Harry's decision to choose love is a nice reminder of Dumbledore's words in Chamber of Secrets that a person's choices show who they truly are. While Dumbledore's actions showed him to be a man who struggled and often failed to fully embrace love, Harry was able to embrace love in a way that Dumbledore couldn't. This decision allowed Harry to defeat a man who openly denied the power of love. Thank you.